Oh, what's up, guys? Haargus. It's me. Remember him? I don't. I'm making coffee. I figured I'd put my little stupid thing on my head and actually record a video for once. That's it. It's just for once. So I hope the angle is good. If it isn't, it's a huge bummer, but it's probably going up anyway. So I'm here to talk about coffee. I really like coffee. I drink coffee every single day. I drink all sorts of yummy coffee, and I talk to a lot of people about coffee. So I figured I'd make a video of me making it so people get an idea of what I do every morning, I guess. So I really like Ethiopian coffees. I don't know if you can see this. Naturally processed Ethiopian coffees grown at high elevation are some of my favorite coffees ever. I say that because my eureka moment when I was drinking coffee originally, and I'm just gonna start doing stuff, was with a coffee like this. And if you look at the tasting notes where it talks about blueberry and lavender and Merlot wine and all of these things, a lot of people are like, how can coffee taste like all that stuff? It's coffee. It's supposed to be super bitter. When in actuality, some coffees, especially like this, can be really, really, really fruity, which is not really something you'd associate with like a plain cup of black coffee. Actually, I'm going to leave this out so I can keep talking about it. And I also have this bag that I got yesterday. I had mentioned something being naturally processed earlier. This specifies honey processing. I'll kind of chat about the two differences in those in 1 second. Every morning, I weigh out 45 grams of coffee. I kind of have my ratios that work for me, but 45 grams of coffee. I throw that into my Baratza Encore. And then what I do is I put the little hopper thing in, and then I turn it on, and then it goes, and then that starts going. But that's going to go for a while, I guess. But the coffee is at 206 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't want it too hot, or you might scald your coffee, and then as it starts to cool down, that's like prime coffee drinking temperature and brewing stuff. So if you brew your coffee and the water's too hot, you might scald your coffee. If you brew your coffee and the coffee isn't hot enough, you don't really get all the yummy goo, all the yummy, delicious goo that's inside of your coffee. All right, so a couple things. Oh my God, I love the smell of this coffee once it's ground, because it really, it hits you in the face, and it smells like a blueberry muffin, which I know sounds like a huge, over-exaggeration for people who are like, I got a Dunkin' and I got blah. There's nothing wrong with going to Dunkin'. It's a totally different coffee drinking experience. I would never drink this with milk and sugar, because it wouldn't taste right with milk and sugar. It is so intensely fruity that if I were to put milk and sugar in this, as a cup, it just wouldn't taste right. I've tried, and it doesn't sit right. All right, so this is the 45 grams of ground coffee. And this is my Chemex. This is what I do my pour over in. This is where I make 99% of my coffee. I have a flare to do espresso. One of my friends took that. Don't worry about the cabbage in the sink. I'm making sink broth, so don't worry about that. And then I have my little heated kettle here. So if you noticed, I washed the filter. Sometimes people say that if you don't wash your filter, it can make it taste like, you make your coffee taste like paper. I haven't noticed that, but whatever. There are a number of different steps that you go through when brewing hot coffee, like this, when you do pour over. And the first step is arguably the most important step, but this is called the bloom. And, if I was really serious about this, I'd be weighing it as I poured it out, because everyone has their ratios of pour to, their ratios of water by weight to coffee by weight. People do for every 1 gram of coffee, you do 16 grams of water. I did 45 grams of coffee, and that generally evens out to right above this little nipple on the Chemex here. Oh, good. Real close to that. Hopefully the camera picks it up. There's a little nipple on the Chemex. That means you're at 4 cups in this particular one. So while the coffee is blooming, I guess I'll talk about blooming. So this is roasted coffee. Coffee, right? The coffee bean here is actually the pit of a fruit. It's like a cherry called cascara. And what happens is you extract the coffee pit, cherry pit. Oh my God, whoa. Whoa, there are deer outside. Oh, God, can you see? I'm taking my head thing off. Look at that. Oh my God, there are deer. I'm gonna zoom in, but there's a little thing in the way. Look at that. Look at those little guys. Oh, look at those cuties. Oh, now Moose is freaking out. Hi, Moose. All right, let's go back to business. Oh, excuse my apartment. It is perfectly reasonably messy right now. This is like the right amount of mess where we can just not acknowledge most of the things here. So, okay, the bloom is done. But basically, coffee cherry pit, fruit, and originally, like, coffee cherry pits are just kind of like gummy and green, and they're kind of wet and squishy. They're pretty gross. But when you roast them, you draw out all of the moisture, and you concentrate a lot of the flavor that is left either from the fruit or that's been washed away that's left in the pit. So, you see here, it says processing natural. A naturally processed coffee bean is one of my favorite because it indicates that there's almost like a natural fermentation. God, I hope I'm getting this right. It's almost like a natural fermentation or a natural extraction of the coffee pit out of the fruit. So there's a lot of fruit flavor left on it because there's some time for some funk to happen. The coffee has been bloomed. It's probably been like 2 minutes, which I'm really lazy and I don't really find that it makes a difference for like my normal morning cups. Like when I worked in a coffee shop, and if we ever did this, which we did like once, and then we were like, this is a waste of time because no one gave a shit because people didn't come to our shop for coffee. They came for ice cream. But anyway, whenever we would do this for customers, or whenever I see people doing this for their customers, they always time it. They always have a scale. I do this for myself, so I don't care. All right, but anyway, when coffee pits, coffee beans, call them beans, are roasted, they trap in a lot of like gas and CO2 and stuff. So naturally, as they exist in these little bags, they off gas, and they just kind of like let off and they go of all their little CO2 guys. When you ground your coffee, and you grind your coffee, not ground, when you grind your coffee and then you put it in the Chemex, and then you pour hot water over it, one of the reasons why water temperature is pretty important is it forces a lot of the CO2 that's trapped in the bean out of the bean. And that is where a lot of the like volatile oils and all the not nasty gunk, but like a lot of the oils and gunky stuff that's like trapped in the coffee bean as well. A lot of that's like trapped up here in these little bubbles. So, God, I really hope I'm right. I've been like spewing stuff like this for years to my coworkers, and they're like, "Yeah, you're right," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I haven't really Googled any of this in a while, or like really tried to learn about it in a while, but it's probably fine. All right. Anyway, honey processing. I don't know if you can see this right here. It says white honey, yellow honey, and natural. Honey processing is interesting because as the coffee fruit is like fermenting, it leaves this like gunky secretion outside on the outside of the pit, and that's left on the bean. So the color of that secretion kind of indicates the type of honey processing that this is. Fuego Coffee Roasters out of Rochester, New York, which is where I live, has a lot of these honey processed coffees, and these are really delicious. I really, really love these coffees. I just think that they're really well-rounded. I think they're really tasty. And then before I forget, I do want to talk about, I put that back. So altitude, the elevation that a coffee is grown at is also really important. Coffee is a fruit, and if it's grown at low sea level, the coffee doesn't really have to grow or live like anaerobically. So because there's not a lot of oxygen at high elevation, coffee fruit lives differently than it does at like sea level in Indonesia, or it does at, an orchard in Ethiopia, for example. So one of the reasons why naturally processed Ethiopian coffees are generally so fruity is because they're grown at such high elevation. The actual coffee fruit has to work really, really hard to even like stay alive, basically, because there's not a lot of oxygen. So the coffee pits, right, the beans are generally a lot smaller just because there's a lot less air around there and like a lot less oxygen for the coffee to work with. But the higher the elevation, a lot of the times that is associated with really fruity flavors, because a lot of like the life of the fruit is like it's more concentrated because the fruit has to work harder. That sounds right, and based on things that I've read, I'm pretty sure that's right. So I really hope that's right. Anyway, this is me babbling for a couple minutes. I hope it was informative. I drink my coffee black. It's done because it's right above the nipple. And I'm excited because my coffee is going to taste like blueberries. So thanks for watching. Happy Sunday. Bye-bye.